right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in once again to another episode of Aftershocks TV right here on the CMS network. And today we got a couple old school metal vets with me. We're here to talk about their stoner doom metal outfit, CASSIUS KING, who just released their outstanding sophomore full-length Dread the Dawn. It's out now on Nomad Eel Records. We've got guitarist Dan Lorenzo and vocalist Jason McMaster with us. Gentlemen, thanks for coming on Aftershocks. How are you guys?
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Absolutely, guys. Well, before we get into talking about the new album, Dread the Dawn, and considering that the band's first record, Field Trip, was put out while we were still in the throes of the pandemic, I just want to give the viewers and listeners a quick little background on how the two of you guys came together to initially form CASSIUS KING prior to Field Trip, when that came back out in the summer of 2021, when that came out. Did you guys know each other previously from the Watchtower, Hades days back in the 80s? Or Dan, did you simply just reach out to Jason and recruit him, kind of like you did with some of the other guys in the other projects you've done recently?
Well, we knew of each other for sure. We knew each other's names. I'm going to be honest, I'm not a big Watchtower fan. That's not my kind of music. But, Jason said we met in 1993 in Austin, or 1992, which I only learned that this week doing these types of interviews. But, I've been throwing this name around. This shirt is literally 25 years old or more.
Wow.
I've been using that name for my first solo album, and I was doing some cover songs. I love recording cover songs and making them just a little bit heavier than the original. And I worked with a few different singers, Rob Dukes, and one of my favorite guys to work with was Jason. So I think it was right during the coronavirus shutdown where we decided, hey, man, I got a whole bunch of songs left over. I finished the new Vessel of Light album, and I still got tons of material, and I was still writing. And I told some interviewer last night that the song, Jason, please help me, the first video from our Cleopatra's Needle, that was actually called My Corona when I first wrote it. That was the template.
Okay.
So, yeah, but I love what Jason did. We did some covers. You should hear him sing Mr. Speed by Kiss. Just crushes it. And we thought, let's finally do the originals together.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Thanks for that, Dan.
Oh, you're welcome.
The connection between Hades and Watchtower was through me and Alan Tecchio, Hades singer. We're pen pals. Alan wrote to basically the P.O. box, which was the Watchtower fan club address. And I got the letter, and we started back and forth, and he sent me the first Hades record. He sent me a t-shirt. I just saw that t-shirt yesterday in my closet. It's just way too bright green for me to wear. I mean, it's like emerald green. It would be hard for me to wear. And it's probably the size of a dish rag by now too. But I appreciated, we were kind of fanboying out on each other's band, and of course that would probably be, other than in fanzines and stuff, that would probably be the first time I saw Dan Lorenzo's name. And me being a fan of Hades and anybody who's ever been in Hades, I have respect for. It seems to be a good club. And the irony is thick here. I like to jest and say, when Alan, as per my suggestion, joined Watchtower when I left Watchtower to do the Dangerous Toys thing, and then here we are decades later, me working with he's working with Watchtower members, I'm working with Hades members. I find it odd and quite funny, actually. So there's some trading, baseball card singer trading going on, right?
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. Cool, man. Well, yeah, so let's get into Dread the Dawn. I mean, the first thing I noticed, when I was listening to it, was that you guys, definitely raised the bar production-wise in this record. I mean, it's such a great mix where the music and vocals are just so completely symmetrical, and just they really blend so nicely together. Just top-notch production. What did you do really differently on this record compared to Field Trip in terms of the production to really get this amazing sound that we're hearing on Dread the Dawn?
It's something we don't like to discuss, and it's kind of sort of a secret, but we talked about it last night for only the first time. We did nothing differently. Nothing.
No,
Really?
no.
Wow.
In my if I may, in my eyes and ears, it's a consistency that never, like, we wrote, these songs for, oh, that's enough to make a record. Okay, well then Dan doesn't stop. He's like a shark. He doesn't stop writing or swimming. You pick. And so he just keeps on writing. So, yay, Field Trip is out. Hey, Jason, I'm gonna send you some new songs. Okay. All right, go ahead. J-Rod, John, the engineer producer on this, dude, he's a master. He knows exactly what to do with Dan's riffs, Jimmy's bass and Ron's drums. He knows exactly what to do. And I think that once I got my stuff figured out over here, and the sort of like timbre of vocal stylings that work best over Dan's riffs, and started sending stuff directly to J-Rod, it was kind of like just another day at the office. So here we are, 2 records in. The consistency is the same. I'm not exactly, if you hear stuff that's different about Dread the Dawn in comparison to Field Trip, we should call J-Rod, because I don't think that he did anything different. I just think that everybody he's involved with is just keeping him so busy. He's just getting better at what he's doing.
Okay.
But he does. I asked him what kind of like vocal chain he has set up for me. I feel like he uses the same vocal chain for all of his vocals that are sent to him. I think that he does the exact same thing. I just think that, I don't sound like anybody, you know what I mean? Everybody has their own fingerprint. So, but I'm glad that you think that it's different. If I also may throw into the mix, the songwriting didn't really change either. Maybe you just like these. It's like I'm interviewing you now, Matt. Maybe you just like these songs better now.
Well, I mean, I think what it is just more so maybe I think on Field Trip, and like I said, it wasn't like I'm saying Field Trip was not a solid production record. I just think really, I guess maybe it's the mix that's maybe to me a little better with the vocals and the music. I think the vocals were really out in front not really out in front, but a little more out in front, I should say, on the last record compared to now, where I think it just kind of blends in, really just perfectly. And
it's so funny, Matt. Yeah. Everybody has a different opinion, and we hear completely opposite of what some things you've said. So yeah, we just kind of throw up our hands, like we don't feel like we're doing anything differently. I mean, there was no goals to make a better record, and we got to be just here's 10 more songs, in my opinion. Nothing crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting though. I like that Matt feels like the mix is better, because that's a positive. But at the same time, you and I are sitting here going, I wonder what he's hearing that we're not hearing. It's interesting. It could be, this kind of goes what Dan just said. What are you listening to the record on? What brand of headphones? What speaker setup do you have? What, it just depends on. But then you might be right. You're making me, I'm not second guessing Field Trip. I'm just saying you may be right by way of, because, I do recall maybe, and it's all fractured memories, but, maybe Jimmy saying the vocals are too loud on this part, or they're not loud enough on this part, or I will agree.
Never say that. We never say that, Jason. We've never said they're not loud enough. I don't think Jimmy and I would never say that, in all honesty.
Wow. See, sometimes I have this weird thing about my vocals. They need to fit the part of the song. If they're too loud, I'm going to say that's too loud, or if these guys will suggest, I feel like the vocal part that's happening in this section, the second time around, why did you leave it out the first time? Because we love this. It should happen every time. And, I feel like you know, if you give away your best party trick when there's only 10 people in the room, and then they say you know, then you run out of tricks, you know, don't give the song away too soon, was all that kind of a thing was. And then there's the idea where you know, maybe it does need to be turned up a little bit, but I don't remember there being any kind of like oh my God, J-Rod, what are you doing? The vocals are too loud. You know, nothing. That's just an example, and that never happens. But maybe you're onto something that I just feel like J-Rod's getting better at what he does. I mean, we listen to the song, and go, "Yep, that's a killer. It sounds killer." Next, we don't spend a whole lot of time worrying about what's going to happen, because I just feel like everyone's wearing their hat. You know, we're used to each other now. It's like maybe we got Field Trip under our belt, and now we have this second record, and it was just like we kept going. So the production crew, you know, band and J-Rod, and how we're sending files and stuff is working better just because we know what to expect of each other.
Sure. Well, whatever J-Rod's doing, he just needs to keep it up, because, like I said,
there you go.
It's excellent. So yeah, so musically now, you know, similar obviously to the first record, but again, I just feel like there's a level of tightness on this record that's just, you know, is better, you know, which would make sense, I think, because the three of you, Dan, I know you, Jimmy, and Ron, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but between the three of you, I mean, this would, I think, mark the fourth record you guys have done in like the last 3 years or so, right? Between the two Vessel Light records and now the two CASSIUS Kings.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So you could tell that you guys really have recorded together extensively. I mean, so even though you guys have played with each other, obviously, for some time, back some time with Hades, I mean, has the last three records, in your opinion, or I should say 4 records in the last 3 years, have these recordings that you put out, has that really brought sort of maybe, you guys, once again, as Jason was alluding to, with J-Rod getting better and better, just because he's, just working with you guys?
I'm definitely, my guitar playing gets worse every year, so I got to write simplistic songs. Jimmy too. Jimmy's like, we're both like, oh man, I have this weird French pronounced thing that I have tremendous pain from here to here. I'm trying to get rid of it just the last few months. I put off going to a doctor for years. I finally went to a doctor about a month ago, and I got to do these, exercises that I pretty much forget how to do. But so I don't know if you know this, if I told you this the last time we spoke when I was about to release the Patriarchs in Black album, but the last 4, 5, 6 albums I've done, I do everything first to a click track, which is not at all the way we used to do things 30 years ago. So I almost can finish an album, or at least certainly finish 4 or 5 songs before Ron even starts to play drums. So maybe I'm getting better with the click. And, so I play the whole album pretty much, or, most of the guitar parts, and then Ron comes in, then Jason, then Jimmy. So, I guess you could say, we've been playing together so long, me, myself, Ron Lipnicki, and Jimmy Shulman, that we're getting tighter. But we haven't even jammed together in 2 years. We're actually going to rehearse next month together for the first time in 2 years, since right after the first little wave of COVID, where we thought it was kind of safe to maybe have a rehearsal. We did one rehearsal, and then everything kind of shut down again. But, maybe you do get better at your craft, or like me specifically, maybe I know my limitations, but I almost feel like you could put the 2 records together. But J-Rod is funny too, because back in the old days, I don't know if Jason did records this way, but like the first Hades album, we literally would have 5 guys sitting in a room. Jimmy, put me louder. The drummer, put me louder. Me and Ed, put me louder. Me and Scott LePage, put me louder. And now J-Rod, when I first met him, he's like, all right, here's how I mix. I don't allow you in my room while you're mixing. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about, dude? I'm not going to be there. And he's like, no. He's like, I'm going to send you the mix, and then you tell me what you think. So the first time I worked with him, he sent me the mix, and I'm like, what the hell? Does this guy actually know what a mix should sound like? This is amazing. This is pretty much exactly what I would have done. So, we just left him alone, and, very happy with the way both albums came out. But I'm glad that people like you like Dread the Dawn, CASSIUS King even better.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
I want to point out, not only is it on Nomad Eel Records, that's the California label, Matt,
sure.
So maybe that's why you're pushing that. But in Europe, it's on MDD Records.
Sure.
MDD Records in Germany, and they actually have a different bonus track. They have a Judas Priest bonus track where Nomad Eel has the 2 Kiss cover for the bonus tracks on the CD.
Okay, cool. Thanks for clearing that up. Yeah.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yeah. So now, Jason, let's get to you in terms of your vocals. I mean, so your approach now with CASSIUS King is obviously much different than anything that you've done with the bands, at least the bands I know that you've been in, over the years. Obviously, Watchtower, Dangerous Toys, and Broken Teeth. And really, with CASSIUS KING, you really harken back to those classic metal influences. Obviously, many people are comparing them to Dio style vocals, and I don't know if I've ever heard really anyone come close to really that voice and style and doing it as well as you're doing on these records. It's very impressive. I mean, did you know immediately what you wanted to do vocally upon hearing the music for CASSIUS KING, even going back to Field Trip when you first jumped on board with Dan? Or did you have to sort of experiment a little before you knew how you really wanted to approach the vocals with this band?
When Dan, thank you for the compliments, by the way. I've always been a Dio fan, from his Rainbow days. The ideas only come from the inspiration of the song or the riff or the vibe of the color and the timbre of the tracks that I'm sent. And it could be from any project, not just stuff coming from Dan, but any of the people that I write with, or the 1 million projects that I'm involved in. So like Dan, here's a scenario. Dan will send me 2 or 3 new ideas and whatever, and if they have they'll have drums. If it's only a click, I probably won't. I'll go, does this have drums on it? Don't send it to me unless it has drums. If it has bass, even better, because I'm going to get a better idea of where I need to go vocally, with tone, or how dark the lyric is even, I feel like supposed to be when I'm sort of telling the story, right?
Mhm.
And that's very, very important. The idea that people call, well, what kind of band is CASSIUS KING? What can I expect? And if you like stoner rock and doom and and stuff like that, you're gonna like this. And that's fine. People can try to describe CASSIUS KING all they want, but ultimately, when you think about what some people don't know, that I'm like an old school thrash metal singer who's singing rock and roll, So when you know my history, like Matt, you seem to know my history, and of course Dan does. The idea, if they only know me from Dangerous Toys or Broken Teeth, is like, well, he's this butt rock guy. What's he doing singing this Dio style doomy kind of hard rock, dark, toned rock, whatever you want to call it. And Dan coming from Hades, and if they've heard the Vessel of Light and the even Patriarchs in Black, of course they're going to know that he's leaning heavy on the darker side of just bluesy guitar playing. And when you say that, you think of, okay, well, man, that could be anything. That's Kiss and AC/DC, bluesy guitar playing, so with his he likes to pull the tuning down a little bit, and that's cool. But what's happening with his bluesy riffs and kind of dirgy tempos and stuff, it's making me feel like that's where the vocals kind of need to work as well. So that's kind of, if it sounds, it usually it's in minor key, so that also kind of shoves me into like an Ozzy Dio frame of mind, and makes me think about, what would Geezer Butler write about here, and because I love Geezer's lyrics, and try not to talk about war. It's hard to not write metal lyrics that don't have to do with war and pain, so. But I found a few topics that really worked well. I like to, walk around in hang out with the tombstone, sing to the tombstones under the full moon is kind of like where these kind of riffs are pointing me. I know that sounds doom and gloom, but that's kind of like happens in heavy metal lyrics anyway, and it's quite romantic actually. So the you know, where I'm going vocal with my tone and everything is influenced by Dan's guitar. That's probably the shortest answer I can give.
Okay, fantastic. Well, let's get into the first single and video off the record for the track "Abandoned Paradise." Musically, it's got that mid-tempo groove with Dan's obviously his signature, doing metal riffs and tone. And I saw that, Michael Gilbert also from Flotsam and Jetsam played the lead on that track as well. So I guess, go ahead and talk about, Dan, Abandoned Paradise and how you got Michael on board for this track as well.
Well, it's funny. So Hades played a couple of shows, Michael says, in 1988. Hades opened up for Flotsam and Jetsam. I remember one show. Michael says it was 2 shows. And then we had no contact until about 2 years ago. His publicist was my publicist for the, I think it was Thy Serpent Rise, Vessel of Light, Thy Serpent Rise, or Last Ride. And she asked me if I wanted to interview any of her bands. I'm like, no, because I don't get paid to write. I'm not going to interview anybody. Thanks anyway, though. And she's like, what about any way you could put Michael Gilbert in Outlaw Biker? Because I write for Outlaw Biker. I'm like, you probably named one of the few guys I would actually do an interview with, this because he was so nice to us so many years ago. So, and I'm thinking, like, Michael's not going to remember me. It's the year 2021. We haven't spoken since 1988. And he remembered everything. It was so, like, weird talking with him. And he was actually doing vocals. He has a recording studio in his house, and Rob Dukes and I were doing some cover songs together. And we just stayed in touch a little bit. And then I texted him. I said, hey, man, would you want to play a solo on the next CASSIUS KING album? He's like, I'd love to. I'm in Europe right now. And it's like, his text was like Jason. If you text Jason, he gets back to you in like 1 second. And Michael Gilbert was in Europe on tour, and he wrote back immediately, yeah, let's do it. Just because, we reunited for an Outlaw Biker interview.
Cool.
What a great guy, great guitar player. And, Jason always likes more guitar solos in the music than I do. And we usually use my buddy Scott LePage, who was on the first Hades album. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, after doing the Patriarchs and Black album, I played with like 12 different people. And Jimmy Shum was like, no, don't ask anybody outside the Hades realm. Listen. And I'm like, he's such a nice guy. And, he's a great guitar player. And, we all love the way it turned out.
Fantastic. Now with Jason, I saw a breakdown that you did lyrically for the record, and Abandoned Paradise really has an interesting concept lyrically. Definitely something that a thinking man, I think, would really enjoy. Why don't you talk a little bit about what gave you the idea or lyrical concepts for this track?
Well, I think I came across the title. I can't pinpoint it. If it be, I know that there is a book with the same title. I know that there's probably other songs with the same title or something similar. I know it's not a completely original idea, but I love the title very much. I don't feel like it's direct plagiarism, when just because it's the same title of a book or a movie or whatever. But I do know this, that the idea of someone working their entire life to create a home for themselves and their family, and it become their Shangri-La, become their island of happiness. And then, I also think that it's like lingering, like lockdown and COVID scare kind of this, place in my head. Where people are going to lose their house. People are going to lose their a rich man can be a poor man overnight, or it's very apocalyptic on top of that, especially when you say the words abandoned paradise. It's like man overboard, it's jump ship. It's like, hey, the house is on fire, jump out the window. You're losing everything in a flash. And I thought that the idea was very fearful and enlightening at the same time. Like, you don't know. It's the instinct that people have, the fight or flight kind of thing that comes to mind if, like, but you can't like hold that in your hand. It's not a tangible instinct by way of scenario, boom, your house just blew up and you and the kids are okay, and you're out in the front yard going, what are we gonna do? So something similar to that maybe, or just like I said before, you know, it's very 80s to think of, but boom, a nuclear bomb, and you had a bomb shelter in the back, and you got nothing. You got nothing. Or like just you know, the old story, like, you know, what if you lose everything by way of nature, and starting over is hell. So, you know, having to leave something that you've worked your whole life for it to be taken away by because of war or acts of God or whatever, I think is very scary. And you know, fear-based scenarios are always good and fun to write lyrics.
Well, yeah, no. When I first, read what the song was about, it's one of those things where, yeah, you listen to the lyrics and you do start to think about that. It's one of those things you don't want to you want to think about it, but then it's easy to start to perseverate on it and get getting that whirlwind in your head. It's just like, but I like I said, it makes, I think, a great concept and great art for, it's like I said, it's the thinking man's sort of lyrics, which I love. I love that kind of stuff. And really, just to piggyback off that, just in general, the song titles and lyrics for, obviously for both Dangerous Toys and Broken Teeth, obviously those two are pretty similar in terms of what you sing about. But, it's got that obviously the no frills rock and roll approach, but obviously with Cassius King and this record particularly, it's quite the departure from what most knew you for with your vocal approach. And obviously, as you were, mentioning earlier, I'm sure a lot of it that has to do with the music that's written and what you're feeling. Obviously, you're not going to write about the things you write about with Dangerous Toys and Broken Teeth and with this band. But for a guy, who's traditionally obviously not known for such really, I guess, introspective lyrics like you're doing in Concepts, as an artist, I mean, how important is it for you, if at all, is it to you to be able to, I guess, display to your fans, rock and metal fans in general, that you've got the skills and wherewithal to write about these ideas and concepts outside of what you've done over the years with those other bands? Is that something you really sort of wanted to also maybe kind of push out there and let your fans know that you can write these lyrics too if you wanted to, and just if the project or the band is fits it?
Well, if people, and once again, thank you, because you're making me sound like I'm a reader, and I'm not. I don't read. I think it's something to do with my brain. I tend to read the same line over and over and over, and I have to start over. I don't know, but I'm working on it. I have a library of books that I plan to read when I'm an old man retired. Now, the idea of, once again, I wanted to just throw the Abandoned Paradise. A good way to sort of put it would be like movies and stories like Legend or Omega Man and stuff like that, where the world is over and you're the only sole survivor, and it's, you and a pack of dogs, and you're having to start all over from scratch. That's kind of a good simpleton way to look at Abandoned Paradise. But if people have been, the ones who've been following me know, but there's a lot of records I've made that have these darker side of lyrics. In the late 90s, I had a band, and we've recently started it back up, called Godzilla Motor Company. And these lyrics with Godzilla Motor Company are very similar to like what's happening here in Cassius King, kind of darker themes, self-reflection a little bit, dealing with some fantasy involved, mainly other worlds, thinking about existence in other worlds, whether they be humans, aliens, humanoids, robots. Nothing is off the table. So Godzilla Motor Company did a lot of stuff like that, but very similar to Cassius King lyrics. That Godzilla Motor Company record, it's self-titled. It's available everywhere. And then I made 2 records. This is all obviously pre Cassius King. I made 2 records with an Italian guitar player by the name of David Tiso, who is like I don't want to say black metal or death metal, but that's pretty close, but very progressive.
Okay.
Called Ifal Duath. I think I'm saying that right. EPHALDUATH. Ifal Duath, something like that. Anyway, Howling Sycamore is the name of that project. We made 2 records. This was pre-pandemic. It was like 2016 or 17 that he contacted me, and we followed through with 2 records, much like Cassius King. And he wrote all of the lyrics for that. It was very David did. It was very inspirational. His wife, Karen Crisis, who some people might know that name.
Sure.
See, you're reacting. She actually wrote a few. So Karen Crisis, her husband is David Tiso.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that.
So there's a connection there, and probably what David's into if you know what Karen is into.
Sure.
Yeah. So the lyrics were incredibly influential to me, and I got to tell Karen that a couple times, and so that kind of inspired me a little bit to try to teach myself how to write like that a little more.
Okay.
And then I'm in power metal bands. One band is called Igniter, and I've done about 7 records with Igniter, and they're all gloom and doom and this kind of, it's power metal. Of
Sure.
course it's going to be, you know, cloaked swordsmen riding black horses that breathe fire, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And then Evil United is another band that I made 3 records with since around the same time, 2014 maybe, pre Howling Sycamore, after Godzilla Motor Company, but yeah. And those are like thrash, classic metal thrash. They lean into power metal, but that's just a token name. And those records are fucking heavy as shit. And the some of the lyrics are about brutal things. So yeah, I mean, I've been writing heavy metal lyrics long enough to probably put out a lyric book, which I've actually thought of, and all the Cassius King lyrics would definitely be in there because I'm super proud of them.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Yeah, they're like I said, the concepts are very. I guess I love just, to me personally, I like getting lyrics that make you think, and that they're not just straight in your face, and they're obviously just obvious with their words. So, yeah, kudos to you with the lyrics on this, absolutely, on this record.
Thank you.
And I was as I was talking a little bit earlier about the sound and the style of the band. Dan, musically, Cassius King really reminds me a lot of nonfiction stuff, because it's really got that 90s sort of mid-tempo groove to a lot of the songs, and the riffs are very bluesy, like on Doomsday, Hand. And you had similar stuff, a similar style to me. I think Cassius King is as close to the nonfiction stuff as anything that you've done, meaning compared to Vessel Light, which I think is just a little bit more of your classic downtrodden slow tempo doom metal stuff. But what I think Cassius King has that nonfiction didn't, obviously, are those 80s elements to it. It really has such a unique and refreshing, I think, take on your typical modern day stoner and doom sound that a lot of the bands really don't have. To me at least, most of the modern day doom and stoner bands have just, it's very obviously, Sabbath influenced. And it really has, a lot of them are starting to use analog and try to get that, that old school sound and style. But with those 80s elements that you guys have with Cassius King, on top of obviously Jason's vocals, I think you guys definitely have your own unique take on this kind of music, which, like I said, it's not that easy to do. I know you've told me before that you simply just write riffs and that there's no really plan or thought process that goes into it in terms of what you're trying to extract specifically in terms of the style. So I guess my question is then, and as you mentioned before, in terms of the writing process, how you come up with the riffs and kind of ship it off to Jimmy and Ron. I mean, with those now, I mean, how vital I should say is, I guess, then the rhythm section with Jimmy and Ron in terms of what songs you use and perform for each project you have. I mean, does what they do with your riffs in terms of the tempo specifically, in the end, does that determine which songs will be on Cassius King and which ones will go on Vessel of Light? I mean, how do you delineate the tracks to the bands?
No, I feel like all of my music has been one way since 1990, like since nonfiction. And I was really trying to get Hades to tune down back in the mid 80s, but the other guitar players and Jimmy didn't feel comfortable with tuning down their strings. They thought the intonation would go off. But I do want to point out that Jimmy, actually, you mentioned the song Doomsday. Jimmy Shulman wrote all that music. I think I wrote one little tiny part, my favorite part that Jason sings, my favorite melody line under the low Doomsday's Hand part.
Yeah, that's a great part.
Yeah, that's my favorite vocal on. It's so awesome, and it has to be in Jimmy's song. What are you doing, Jason? But no, seriously though, like I never feel like that big of a difference between like whether it's Patriarchs in Black, Cassius King, Vessel of Light, because I write all those songs over the same course of a winter, we'll say, and I'll write 20 songs, and I'm sending 10 to Johnny Kelly, 10 to Ron Lipnicki, Jason gets. So to me, they could all be interchanged, but it's funny that once the vocalist starts singing, I don't know how this is possible, but it gives the whole feel. Even when you listen to the song the next time, as soon as the song starts, I'm like, that's a Cassius King song, and it could only be a Cassius King song, which is so weird because obviously the vocals don't even start in, say, till 30 seconds in. But to me, it just has such at least a slightly different vibe. That each project is a little bit different, but it's all coming from, me writing songs mostly right up here. I did write a song driving home from basketball, Jason, 14 months ago, October, because I called the song October. I was driving home in my car and I heard a riff, and that's the song that became Pariah to Messiah. And I think that was right after I started talking with Johnny Kelly about doing a Patriarchs in Black album. I said, maybe that song should be a Patriarchs in Black song. But, the singer just means so much to the song as to how the end result is going to be. Ron likes playing a little more up-tempo. We're a Vessel of Light. We want to be really doomy. So Ron likes Cassius King a lot more, I think, than he likes Vessel of Light. But it's funny how even if I could write 20 songs, once you add the different singers to it, it becomes, I think, its own entity. But I loved nonfiction at the time. It was like, to me, it was like Hades was here. And then when I did nonfiction was here. I was just in love with nonfiction. It was exactly what I wanted after Hades, like just to simplify the songs, accentuate my riffs, don't have the crazy rhythm section distracting from my riffs. And I feel like, Cassius King is similar to that. Like I said, since 1990, I feel like my guitar playing I found myself in 1990, and it's still how I'm playing in the year 2022.
I wanted to add, in doing press over the past few days, it's kind of like something that I realized verbally by just kind of, blabbing myself here, listening to my own voice kind of describe it a little bit. Dan's riffs are just Dan's riffs. Like, I feel like the 20 songs that he's writing over the winter, he could send random 10 songs to me and random 10 songs to somebody else, and it wouldn't matter. Like let's say I'm Dan and I'm going to go, okay, well, these 10 are definitely Patriarchs in Black songs, and these 10 are definitely Cassius King. And then I was joking yesterday in an interview. I said, what if he accidentally sent me the Patriarchs in Black songs and sent the Patriarchs, the Cassius King stuff to the other guys? And it's like, it wouldn't matter to me. I wouldn't know any difference. And I feel like that's a good thing. Oh shit, I sent you the wrong songs. No, you didn't. Let me have these. This sounds like Cassius King to me, because it's Dan Lorenzo. So I think that it's sort of this sort of like upside down compliment to Dan, that just be you. Just be you all the time. Don't change anything. Keep listening to Aerosmith and Cheap Trick and Kiss and AC/DC and tuning your guitar down, and just keep doing what you're doing, because it's working and people dig the songs that, obviously I as long as you want me to keep singing on your songs, I will, Dan. So it should be that way with the other singers too, especially if it's giving your song some kind of identity under this umbrella or that umbrella kind of a thing. It's separating your songs. I'm agreeing with Dan that, when I sing on it, it's going to be a Cassius King thing. So if it's me and Dan, it's going to be a Cassius King thing.
Battery
Well, and what's interesting too, Dan, is like you said, you're not really coming from a Black Sabbath spot. I mean, like Jason was saying, he just laid out really the bands that you always talk about that really influence you, which is interesting because most, in this sort of sound, that's what emanates a lot from the Sabbath. But as what's I think unique too about your style is that it's not coming from that pure 70s Sabbath. It's got the Aerosmith and the Kiss and all the other.
Which is, I know, probably weird to some people. If I only talked about the bands that I was influenced by, you would have a totally different idea of how my music would sound if you never heard of me. But Thursday night, my wife and I were watching Showtime, and we saw the Dio special. Mm-hmm. And my wife, when Heaven and Hell came on the screen, my wife's like, I remember thinking, that's not Black Sabbath. And I remember thinking, I like Black Sabbath more than I ever did when Dio came on and they did Heaven and Hell. I was just like, that's the record I want to listen to. Like, I have such a short attention span that I know Black Sabbath is an important heavy metal band, but when they start to meander, and like, I was listening to the radio just half an hour before this, some DJ was playing some of our songs and he's playing some other bands. And they did that typical thing where the song ends and everybody's like, that, and it was going on for a minute. I'm like, I can't do this. I can't. I have a really short attention span. So if you're going to write, and then I'm saying that, but we have 2 8-minute songs on this album, which I love. For the most part, I prefer, like I told the bass player from The Cursed, who was a radio guy for Atlantic Records in 2007, I said, my mind goes like this. It goes like Black Sabbath riffs with Ramones length style songs, 3.5 minutes out. Doesn't need a guitar solo necessarily, but it's great. Like Jason, we'll say he pushes me to do some guitar solos in the song Bad Man Down. And then I listen, and Jimmy says to me for the 3rd time today, who's playing those leads on Bad Man Down? Is that LePage? I'm like, no, that's me, dude. He's like, they're pretty good. He's like, they're not bad, man. I'm like, yeah, I know, But and then like I talked about this the other day. Jason said to me, hey man, what do you think if we put a flute at the beginning of Genesis? And I'm like, of course. And Jimmy Shulman, I use him as my second confidant. My wife is my first confidant. She sits downstairs and I'll be playing a riff. I'll look to see if she's like, doing like this. I bring it to Jimmy Shulman, and Jimmy Shulman, I love him, but sometimes he'll tell me no. And I'm like, Jason said flute on Genesis, and Jimmy said no. I said, no, I think I want a flute on Genesis, so I'll override his opinion. I care very much what his opinion is because he gives it to me straight, but sometimes I do override him. So a guy like Jason, he knew the flautist, as you described him, right? The old Watchtower manager, and I love it at the beginning of Genesis, and it's just makes the record a little bit different. Sure. Makes the ears a little bit like fresh for the what's to follow.
I feel like this sounds opinionated, and that's fine because we're talking about Jimmy has a say. Of course, it can be overridden, and that's kind of like the democracy here. If we are making a record or just Dan is making a record. See, so I feel like when I heard that intro, and I can't even remember if I had the lyrics yet or if I'd even cut the vocal for that song yet, or if it even had a title yet. I don't recall, but it doesn't matter. So. When I hear I don't think so either. That's why I'm doubting myself. When I heard the acoustic intro, there's no clock, there's no click track, there's no clock. It just sounds thrown in there, and it sounds like I'm dissing the idea, and I'm totally not. I'm all about let's do something crazy for this so we can vibe the listener out before this song kicks in and crushes your head, right? So I feel like I knew what he was doing by shoving this acoustic, just this big sort of meandering acoustic chord, and it's loud. J-Rod was not afraid to turn that guitar up. It's loud, so you got this just acoustic like blah, fla, na, 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 blah, and that's all it was. It did it like 3 or 4 times, and I'm like, okay, and then the song kicks in. I'm like, okay, I want to sing over this. Or this is a donut without sprinkles. I've got to put some sprinkles on this fucking donut. There's no icing on this cake. This cake tastes good, but aesthetically, it sounds like it's thrown in there. Let's try to get something to sort of have it melt its way a little bit easier into the big climax when the song kicks in. This is when the discussion started with Dan and simultaneously with Fred, my old time buddy who managed Watchtower in the 80s, and he's a master musician. He sings, he plays guitar, he plays keys, he plays keyboards, he plays flute. He plugs he's got a pickup on his flute, and he plugs it into his guitar pedal board, and his pedal board is like a fucking spaceship. So I can just see him cutting those flute parts, in his studio, just playing a flute through all this echo and weird, phaser and stuff. So I knew that it was going to work for the vibe of what Cassius King has going. The trippy Zeppelin Sabbath vibe that sometimes our tunes have. I knew that was going to work. And I just wanted to kind of warn the rest of the guys, might be some flute on this. I'm glad Dan liked it.
I love it.
Yeah, no, it does. I think it sounds great too. I think it's perfect, man. I just want to, ask you guys something too here. Now, no matter, I think, what you have both done over the years, obviously you're both known, in metal circles for what you've really done, with your bands in the 80s, people hear your names. Dan, obviously with Hades, and Jason, obviously with Watchtower and Dangerous Toys. Cassius King is obviously, a major departure from many of those bands. It's a departure, but we live now in a day and age in hard rock and metal, and really just music in general, where it's all about nostalgia. So even though bands like Broken Teeth and Vessel of Light have been making, noise for years, most older rock metal fans tend to kind of immediately associate you guys with those bands. And these are obviously the fans that you obviously are, targeting, since they're familiar with yourselves and what you've done musically in the past. So, I mean, for you guys, how challenging has it been, if at all, to get really those fans to embrace you being part of something that they don't traditionally know you for? And then, to get them away from simply just wanting to hear Dan from Hades and Jason from Watchtower and Dangerous Toys, especially, like I said, in the modern day of music nostalgia, where not a lot of people are really chomping at the bit to hear a new band or project, or and simply just want you to go back to what they initially know you for musically from your, your stuff in the 80s. Do you guys, has that been a challenge? Even though you guys have been doing other stuff for the last 30 years, do you see that as being a challenge, especially in today's day of music nostalgia?
It's a great point, Matt. And it is a challenge to get everybody to listen to it. But so, if I get an email from somebody or on Instagram or whatever, I'll be, hey man, how did you discover us? Oh, I've been a big fan of yours since Hades' first album, or I've been a big fan of Jason's his whole career. And it's really a cool thing, because even though the pool is getting smaller, the amount of people willing to listen to a brand new hard rock, heavy metal doom band in 2022, there are people out there who actually discover us who didn't know anything about us, and now possibly are interested in buying the, if not the whole back catalog, a bunch of the stuff. I mean, I've been like shocked and surprised. It's not like thousands of them, but there's definitely people who never heard anything that I've done previously, but bought Field Trip or Patriarchs in Black or Cassius King, Dread the Dawn. And it's like, I wasn't aware of you. And now I'm listening to your back catalog. I mean, it happens on a pretty regular basis, not thousands of people, but there are people out there who are just discovering us. But yeah, obviously, we're trying to read some of the old Hades and Watchtower and Dangerous Toys and nonfiction. I got a couple buddies at Sirius XM who've been really cool about whenever they play a Dangerous Toys song, not one every time, but often enough, they'll mention Cassius King. So it's a combination of both.
Yeah, I think that it's a great question, Matt. You described me to a T. I have a hard time hearing anything new by Iron Maiden, just to pick a band that's probably not random. As soon as they stopped writing about the devil and whores, I got bored. So that's meant to be funny, but I have no doubt that if I had the last 5 or 10 Iron Maiden records, I'd probably want to listen to them, and I'm sure I would school myself and probably regret I should have gave this a chance a decade ago, or the same. Now, just to kind of piggyback Dan is all. There's people that you know, had probably written off, you know, they weren't a Dangerous Toys fan. They don't like the tone of my voice on those old records, especially Watchtower. It's like, hey, I love the music, but I can't stand that singer. It's like, it's kind of like, and I don't mean to be picking on the singer. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
There's some people that don't like Rush, and I get in their face, and not, you know, carefully, right?
Mhm.
And I say, it's the vocals, isn't it? You know, I'm calm with them. It's the vocals.
Mhm.
Yeah. How'd you know? Well, it's always the vocals. You know, I love Rush. Their music is great. As soon as that guy starts singing, it's like, I'm out. Can't handle it. And I said, okay, well, let's play a game. So pick, you know, your favorite singers, who you like the best, and let's erase all of Geddy Lee's vocals, and you can put whatever singer you want on Rush tunes. Do you like Rush now? And they can't even imagine, just like none of us can imagine Rush without Geddy Lee singing. I cannot.
Mhm.
I'm sure it would be great. I mean, what are you going to put Sammy Hagar in Rush? You're going to put, you know, Robert Plant would probably be able to sing Rush, and it would be cool because that's what Geddy originally, I mean, their first few records, they were trying to be like a Led Zeppelin.
Mhm.
And so anyway, I feel like if people, you know, like what Dan is doing, let's say with Vessel of Light, and then they hear Cassius King, I don't see why they wouldn't at least go, wow, this is pretty good. At least, you know, give it some fare, you know,
Mhm.
and then go, wow, who's this singer? And then you tell them, well, it's the guy from Dangerous Toys. It's like, Dangerous Toy, really? It's the same guy. And they're fucking shocked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because they don't know that I can sing with tone. You know, they
Mhm.
just think I'm going, you know, screechy, you know, mongoose voice, you know,
Mhm.
angry badger, you know,
Mhm.
all the time. And so that's, if people are willing to, and the same with, you know, some of my people who follow me don't know Dan, and I go, remember that band Hades? That's him. That's
Mhm.
him. He's got this whole slew of material. And so I think that it's been working both ways that you described, or questioned. And I think that that's great. I think that it's, but they're not, you know, it's not a herd of people. It's not like a mass exodus of people running towards us.
Mhm.
You know, it's been slow to answer the question. It's been slow, but that's okay. You win your fans one at a time.
Sure. Now, are you noticing, is it more of the you know, the metal fans from your guys' generation that are embracing Cassius King, or is it really the younger stoner and doom metal fans who this music's more resonating with? Considering, because there's been a really you know, a really solid burgeoning stoner and doom scene, really on a global scale over the last 10 plus years. So do you know, is it more the younger fans that are kind of, you know, coming more towards Cassius King, or is it your fans from your previous bands that are really embracing it?
Honestly,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I can't really tell.
So, okay.
Dan, what do you
Yeah,
think?
I've never asked for birth certificates or driver's for people who send me emails and stuff, but I have a feeling it's nobody under 30. I can tell that much. I assume.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, just curious because it's just
Yeah.
like I said, it's just an interesting time with music and, you know, putting out new music. So it's just something I'm always kind of trying to figure out myself, and what the tastes are and what people's, you know, music preferences are. So I mean, now just you guys now both obviously been very busy in 2022, and while I have you here, Jason, I mean, obviously you've been the ultimate bullpen guy for some all-time great classic metal bands this year, especially over the last pretty much month or two. You recently obviously filled in on vocal duties for both Mark Tornillo and Accept, and the great John Bush and Armored Saint. And the craziest thing is just really how close both of those, you know, were to each other, just almost back to back. So I guess my question is, you know, first of all, I mean, I would have to, you know, I mean, you're a real laid back guy, but was it pretty, you know, was there a lot of pressure on you to perform both of those gigs in such a short matter of time, one after the other? Or was it, you know, maybe a bit easier, or I should say less pressure, doing maybe the Armored Saint film because you already had now done Accept and kind of got your feet wet with that? Because, and obviously there's been nothing but, you know, great response to what you were able to bring to both of those situations.
I It's one long like, oh shit. Like the whole time was just oh shit. I can almost remember it's like the reaction, the sort of like teetering to decide to say yes kind of a moment. You know, I'm on the phone with the middleman, I'll say, because a friend of mine texts me and he goes, call this guy. And so I call this guy. And this is before I'm on the phone with Wolf Hoffman from Accept. This would have been in October. You know, and I'm going, I'm like, there's a war inside my head. You know, I'm just getting over an upper respiratory infection myself. So I'm not even 100%. And I'm telling everyone who will listen to me, who I'm on the phone with before I actually pack my bags. Well, I'm not 100%. I'm just warning you. You know, I mean, I can sing, I have energy, I'm not dead, you know, but there's some goblins living in here, you know, and I can almost cut it like a knife. That decision where I'm like, damn it, I need to do this, you know. And that was with a little help of from my wife and my bosses as well. It's like I'm talking to anyone who will go, yeah, you kind of need to do this. It was within like 5 minutes, you know. And then I'm on the phone with Wolf, and then, you know, logistics, and you know, I get a text from Wolf an hour later, pack your bags. You know what I mean? And then plane tickets start showing up in my email, and it was just one long, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And it was not really any different. It was just such a surprise when I'm, you know, 2 or 3 weeks later, after I'd gotten home from the Accept run, that my phone's ringing, and I'm going, and I'm on the phone with Joey Vera from Armored Saint, and I'm going, he's like, dude, and I'm like, dude, and he's like, dude. Like, dude, I had just seen them, you know, a week earlier in San Antonio, Armored Saint Wasp, and it was amazing, and John sounded amazing. And the differences here, Matt, are I'm obviously a huge fan of Accept and Armored Saint. That's like my high school soundtrack, throwing some Merciful Fate and some Venom, and of course all of the others you can just stack on top, and that's my, you know, that's my boombox, you know. And then covering Accept, Watchtower covered like 8 Accept songs, you know, back in the day. So I had sent the middleman, his name's Ed Aborn, is a friend of Wolf's, and I'd sent him a couple of links of me covering Accept songs. I sent them Fast as a Shark, which is Igniter has covered Fast as a Shark, and that's just on YouTube. And then Watchtower covering Run If You Can from the Breaker album, and that's from like 1999 or something. And Wolf got a hold of them, and that's kind of how it all just kind of blossomed into that. But I gotta say, that happening twice, that's lightning striking twice in the same place, and they say that never happens. So it's kind of just a completely bizarre chain of events, I feel like. And then a friend of mine, my co-host on my podcast, says, you know, what's up with these guys getting up, you know, they get past Tennessee and the Carolinas and they come down with this infection. And it's like, man, I don't want anybody to get sick, but something's going on right there. It's like lead singer Bermuda Triangle or something. So I don't know, but I will throw this in there. I basically twice in a matter of like a month, I got to eat breakfast with Dan Lorenzo, get a ride to the Newark airport, Dan Lorenzo, in one day. I got to, and he picked me up from the hotel. That, I know that was backwards, and then a few weeks later, I got to have a sit down with not only Dan Lorenzo from CASSIUS King, and I got to meet Ron Lipnicki for the very first time. This would have been on the Armored Saint run there at the Wellmont in Montclair, New Jersey. So
cool.
yeah, it's been crazy, crazy time. I've known the Armored Saint guys since like 1985, so very friendly. And me and Bush were pen pals, and call each other once in a while. And the guys in Armored Saint have been like step brothers, that you see once a year at Thanksgiving or something for a long time. So that was different to compare. Little bit of difference there by the Accept guys treated me like I was, the new little brother kind of thing. And I was, whatever I needed, the crew and the tour manager, it was great. I was treated very, very well. And same with Armored Saint, of course. So it's what a trip. But the preparations, because there was no rehearsal. It was get the call next day. I'm on a plane. I've got a notebook. The notebook goes on stage with me, verbatim, both of those runs with both bands. So it was, somebody described it as you have balls of steel to even attempt to try to fill the shoes of both of those guys twice in a month. And how did you learn the song so fast? It's like, well, I'm a singer. I love music. If I'm going to sing something, I'm going to listen to it until I walk onto the stage. So it was a lot of cramming, studying, and a little bit of a test. But that it's the funnest. I can't wait to go take this test. It was one of those. But I love both singers, and they're both legends. Mark and John are fucking living legends in my book. So,
yeah, absolutely. No, great. Now, Dan, you've put out now, what, 5 records in 4+ years, the CASSIUS King records, like I said, Vessel Light and Patriarchs in Black. I believe you have another one, I think, in the vault, if I remember correctly, for Patriarchs in Black. Was it that you said you had? Are you working on?
7 albums out in 5 years, and I finished writing the next Patriarchs in Black album. And I still have, there's this little Zoom unit on here that I have hundreds of riff ideas that I either have used, maybe say out of 265 pieces of music, there's probably about 150 things I haven't used. Now that it's winter time and I really stopped playing basketball, I got to spend some time listening to this and find some riffs that I, need to develop further with the secondary riff. But yeah, I mean, it's been fun. I've always writing, and it's just been, I've never had a streak like this, though.
I was going to say, man, you just eat, sleep, shit, and write riffs all day, man. I mean, because it's just, I mean, the pace you're on is just it's unbelievable.
It's so
man.
weird.
It really
it's so weird. And it's like, I don't even play guitar more than an hour a week, probably. But when I do, it's usually writing, and then I'll go record. But yeah, I want to start spending a little more time playing guitar because it's been so fun. But I still have a pretty active life. I work for a supply company, a tattoo supply company called Painful Pleasures. And in the warm months, I play basketball. I like to travel. Jimmy Shulman and I are flying to South Beach Tuesday, kind of like his 60th birthday present. And I plan on doing more. I'm sure Jason and I will have a 3rd record out if he wants, whether it be 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years from now. I mean, maybe we're moving a little too quickly for the amount of fans we have, but I certainly envision doing it again sometime, down the road.
Yeah, well, you've got 2/3 of your projects and bands there too. Are two of your big partners there are located down in Texas. There, I mean, so when you going to trade in your New Jersey Yankee card there and head down to the Lone Star State?
I think if I move anywhere other than Key West, Florida, my wife would have my neck. But
okay,
yeah, and plus, it hasn't really been a problem. Like Jason said, there's bands. He never met our bass player Jimmy Shulman. We've done 2 records together and a bunch of cover songs. They actually. The German label actually is talking now. They want us to release a cover CD.
Oh, wow,
we already have a bunch of covers that we've done together. We probably would have to do a few more, but it just gets easier because of the way the world is nowadays. I mean, for all the negativity and all the downside of the way the world is, it is kind of getting easier to do projects with people in other states.
Yeah,
I think that it's. I want to mention this. Dan is a great rainmaker. He's much like me by way of he gathers no moss, but there is something about Dan that I wanted to bring up that's not trying to embarrass him or anything. It's more that he has found some people who really care about the music that he writes, and that is Damon at Nomad Eel Records and these guys at MDD. I think that, Dan, that you've fallen into a couple of sort of, I don't want to say record deals, but you have a knack for getting involved with people who seem to really care about the product and are excited when you have something new to put out, and that's kind of rare because you know what I mean? It's like Joe Blow can't write some songs and go, oh, these guys put out everybody's shit, I'll just send it to them, they'll put it out. No, it's not necessarily like that. They're going to spend money they had to make to put this out. If they have to believe in the material. So the fact that Dan has been able to become friendly with these people who, and it's all just, I'm sure it's Dan's charming personality that has some percentage there by holding weight there. But obviously they have to like his music. What if his riffs were terrible? They can still be his friend, but there's not really a working relationship going, oh, it's Dan again, he's such a nice guy, but God, his riffs are terrible. That's not happening. It's the other way around. It's like, Dan, cool. What? You have a fourth, a fifth CASSIUS King record, So I think that the like-mindedness is crossing over in the best way. And Dan doesn't, I don't know when Dan sleeps. He gets up at the crack of dawn every day too. So
yeah, no, it is. You're right. It's a good point, Jason. I mean, it is impressive this day and age, especially. I mean, it's hard to get, deals, labels, and so forth. I didn't want to really sink any money into music anymore, and you've got, go for it.
You guys, I don't know if Matt knows this. You might not be aware of this, and I wasn't aware of it until about 3 years ago when Vessel of Light was playing a show in Brooklyn, and I was really upset because the label we got wanted to delay our album a couple months. So I'm like, why would you delay it? He's like, I have to put these bands. I'm like, forget it, I'm off this label. And the guy told me, like, yeah, but don't you know why? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, because your label, all the bands pay him to put out records. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, all these bands, like, they offered us the same deal. Give us $2,500 and we'll form a partnership and we'll release your CD. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, the bands are paying these labels. And I didn't even know that. There's a bunch of labels out nowadays where it's like, look, we're in this together. We love your music. Give us $2,500 and we're going to, Jason, were you aware of this? I only found this out like 3 years ago.
No, that's a pay to play.
Yeah.
That's a regular.
Like,
that's a regular.
I was shocked. And the guy said to me, he's like, Dan, is like, this is the way it is nowadays. Like they probably respect you too much to throw you $1,000. They'll give you $1,000, but it's not like that for the rest of us. And I was in shock that people giving money to a record. I thought this was a real label. Wow. I couldn't.
Well, it's no, I mean, I've had the biggest record deal you can get, and I've had no record deal at all. The difference now is it's back to DIY. So DIY to me means, okay, well, we're going to write the songs and we're going to pay for the recording of the record. We're going to deliver the record. Now, if a label has no intention on giving the band anything, or you're just going to deliver the record, it's recorded, it's mixed, we're giving you all of the artwork, we're paying for the artwork, everything is done, it's ready to go, and they're not going to spend any money on promotion or ads or promoting any of the materials that you have provided to them, then they're not doing anything other than delivering it to the pressing plant and paying for the pressing of CD of the actual product. And something like that usually is they won't even do any of that unless they get all of your digital rights. And that's not happening at all. It's, as a matter of fact, it's the opposite. Okay, we're going to give you everything that you need to put out a record, but we're going to get the digital rights, and you're basically going to press and promote this record, and that's how they get their machine rolling. And the labels that are doing that, bless their hearts, because the more they put into it, the more they're going to get out of it in mechanical royalty, in sales, in pushing that record. But all of this, the publishing and the rights to the songs and the digital rights, if you're giving all of that away, you're not really helping
nothing.
yourself a whole lot.
Yeah.
Especially if they don't have any kind of campaign.
Yeah, we've been really lucky where we got to keep all that, and the label puts out the CD and the vinyl. Nomad Eel has some 7-inch singles of Cassius King, and I think Field Trip's finally going to come out on vinyl in a month or so on Nomad.
Yeah, and Dread the Dawn is right after it. Stuff's been delivered to the pressing plants, and I'm in the band, and I'm excited about that. I want to listen to that shit on vinyl.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know there was obviously that huge backlog last year. Is that eased up at all, or is that still?
Yeah, I'm hearing that has caught up, and there was I have a reissue of a Broken Teeth record that came out in like 2004 originally, and it's coming out on a limited vinyl, and it's just what I have to gauge the pressing plants and where they are now.
They're about 9 months behind in America still, and about
right now they are 9 months behind.
5.5 to 6 months in Europe.
Wow.
The Patriarchs in Black album is just coming out next week. After it only took them 4 months to release it, so that's pretty good actually.
Right. This Broken Teeth record, Guilty Pleasure, I think that the label turned it into the materials to the pressing plants like 6 months ago, and a few days ago the boxes shipped and landed on the guys, in the guy's warehouse. So that's a 6 month, but I think that I didn't know that it was 9, but between 6 and 9 sounds about right. But as far as like we're a year away from, being able to fulfill your order, I think that's over.
Okay.
9 months might as well be a fucking year.
It's a year. It's pretty much the same thing. Exactly. Yeah.
So
totally. Well, Jason, one last thing for you before we wrap this up. For those out there that don't know, and you kind of mentioned this before, you've got a great podcast, video cast yourself called Talk Louder. You guys did an episode last year, which was phenomenal, the Legs Diamond episode.
Oh, cool.
Because that was one of those bands that I always just thought got overlooked and fell through the cracks in the late 70s there. And what was great, I mean, you guys just asked pretty much. That was a band I was always looking to possibly interview because I had so much I wanted to ask. You guys asked absolutely everything that I wanted to know. Where it's like, well, there's no need for me to even pursue that anymore. But why don't you go ahead and let our listeners and viewers, let them know a little bit about Talk Louder and where they could check that out.
It's on anywhere you find podcasts. It's available. It's Apple. We film it, so it's on YouTube. It's not live. We record them and we edit in post-production. It started out during the lockdown. My producer is Jared Tootin, who plays guitar in Broken Teeth. Me and him are the main songwriters in Broken Teeth, and he gets with me and my buddy Metal Dave, and one day in that early lockdown stages, and he's like, "What about you two guys getting a podcast?" And the way he described it was like when me and Metal Dave are, say, in a room and there's a bunch of people, and we start, we're in the corner talking about heavy metal and punk rock and, Kiss or Riot or whatever. And next thing you know, all the nerds were just nerd magnets. All the rock nerds end up going over there. Yeah, man, that's my favorite record and blah, 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 blah. What about that happening in a podcast? Because I don't listen to podcasts, but I'm a metal nerd.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really listen. I mean, that's like watching paint dry. Unless it's someone I'm totally freaking out on and I love,
Mm-hmm.
What, they're interviewing Gene Simmons? I want to hear that. That's somebody that I would probably want to hear. But I still I'm not active in the podcast world other than I just happen to have one. So that sounded cool, and it was kind of a funny little thing that, you know, what Jared didn't say is, you know, it's like, you know, after we made a couple of them, because we have guests now all the time. In the first like 15 or 20 episodes, we didn't have any guests. It was, we picked a topic and it was just Wayne's World, Beavis and Butthead, and that metal show all rolled into one. And 3 hours later, we're talking about this one topic, and our podcasts were like long, and the attention span is crappy. But
Sure.
how I think about that is, you can pause it and go in, get your groceries, and come back in the car and turn it back on. It doesn't matter how long they are, in my opinion. So anyway, fast forward like, you know, 130 episodes, but after we did a couple, I was like, well, that was fun. What's for dinner? You know, and Jared was like, no, fuck no. Think like 100 of these, you know, and I'm like, what? It was a bit daunting, but now that we're way past 100 of them, it's like, duh, I get it. This is going to be ongoing and ongoing and ongoing. We are, you can find us talklouderpodcast.com. Links to all our episodes are there, or there's links to, you know, if you like Apple, YouTube, Spotify, whatever, it's all on there. You can buy merchandise as well. We are doing this thing called Rockin' Pod in Nashville, March 17th through 19th at Nashville Expo. And it's basically like a South by Southwest conference, but for music-related podcasts. There'll be artists there that they assign. They have a liaison there that sets up all of our interviews, and we have a booth, and they come by and we interview them on our own gear. But they also are going to schedule me and Dave getting up on the main stage, and they'll have some artists, probably the bigger name artists will come up, and that will be filmed as well. And then they'll give us like a, you know, those we'll be able to use all the material that we recorded at the Rockin' Pod Expo. We'll be able to edit that and put on our show, put on our roster. So it's kind of cool. Very, very much looking forward to it. But, you know, they're going to have Mark Weiss there. Eddie Ojeda is going to be there. Ron Teal is going to be there. It's fun. And it's Nashville. So like 4 dudes from Accept live in Nashville. So I'm hoping that they'll come by and have dinner.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah. Very cool. So last CASSIUS King question for you guys. I know you probably get asked this a lot. Any talk or thought about playing a show here or there? Obviously, you're not going to tour, but there are, you know, there's some festivals. There's good ones down in Texas and Austin. They got a Ripple Fest. That's really cool down there. You got Psycho Fest in Vegas, Maryland Doom Fest, Desert Fest in New York City this past year. Any talk of maybe doing a show? And then if you do, I mean, do you think there's any, I guess, you know, instead of just obviously other than getting together and playing these songs and having fans listen to them, do you think there's really any, I guess, benefit to doing any shows these days? Like
Good
that?
question.
Well, yeah, there's certainly be a benefit if it's one of those festivals you mentioned, and they would have to ask us to do it, and we would probably try and figure out a way to do it. But, you know, we were talking about this last night. You got 3 of us in Jersey, 1 guy in Texas, but on top of that, I would feel a little bit naked going on stage without a second guitar player for CASSIUS King. So that would add Scott LePage to the mix, which I would love. But, you know, it's not cheap to fly 5 guys somewhere in hotels. And we talked about this last night. We don't need to even make money, but we need to probably come close to breaking even. But it would certainly be exhilarating. It'd be fun. All of us would be up for it.
Yeah, and we would have to do this thing. Wait a minute. What's that? Oh yeah, rehearse.
Yeah.
Because we're not really you know, worked up you know, to do that. The machine right now is able to write songs and record, and we're extremely proud of that. Obviously the outcome is fantastic and the response has been well, but the idea of playing live sounds incredibly fun. But yeah, there's no way for us to break even. Logistically, there's no breaking even. But I like the first thing Dan said. They would have to want us on. They would have to know the material and go, wow, these guys would be good for the blah blah stage at this festival, da 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 da, and we would have to be invited. I don't want to like beg to be on a festival and just be like a little dot in the corner.
Sure. Makes sense.
I think that it would, respectfully, I would want them to know that we would be a good, or feel that strongly that we would be a good fit, and for them to ask us. I don't want to be one of these projects that like, all right, our music sort of fits in this box, so that's where we need to go, and we need to call them and just like really scratch at their door and beg and bleed, say please and all.
Yeah, I understand.
I don't think that that's a thing, but I love it that you think that we are worthy. So thank you, Matt.
Oh, more than worthy. That's considering both of your guys' history and just as well as these last two records, I'm sure you'd be right at the top of that. If you did get invited, you wouldn't be that little blip. I'll just say that. You guys would definitely be near the top of that the list of the top bands playing at the show. But for those in the meantime, go ahead, pick up a copy of the new record, Dread the Dawn, CASSIUS KING. It's out now on Nomad Eel Records in the U.S. and MDD Records in Europe. Guys, go ahead and let the viewers and listeners know where they can pick up the record, and just keep up really what's with the band in general, and just anything you guys got coming out, including singles. I know that you've put out over the last few years as well with Nomad Eel.
Well, if you go to a record store and they don't have our CD, if you can find a record store where you live, you can certainly get them to order it through all the normal distribution channels, whether you're in America or Europe. In Europe, there's actually stores that already have it without you asking. Also, check out, there's a big feature on CASSIUS KING in the next issue of Decibel magazine. I was honored to do an interview about the new CASSIUS KING album that's coming out around Christmas time. And the Instagram CASSIUS KING Band. I'm danlorenzo.net. And Jason and I, we used to talk about, Jason was talking a lot about pen pals. Now we'll be your email pal. If you want to hit us up, we'll probably respond within a few hours for a week.
Very cool. All right. Once again, CASSIUS KING, Dread the Dawn, record out now. And Dan, Jason, again, thank you both for coming on, and good luck with everything. And
thank you.
Can't wait to hear more CASSIUS KING in the future as well.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
All right.
Have a great night.